Ma'am, stop right there. You're not going any further until we find out why you're here. Officer Brian Walker's voice echoed across the crowded plaza, loud enough for everyone near the city administrative center to hear. Conversation slowed. Heads turned. Employees heading into the building paused to watch. At the center of the attention stood a black woman carrying a worn leather portfolio beneath her arm. Monica Hayes stopped immediately. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She simply looked at the officer standing in her path. What happened next would leave an entire courthouse questioning everything they thought they knew. But before we continue, take a moment to subscribe and turn on notifications if you enjoy powerful stories about justice, resilience, and ordinary people overcoming extraordinary challenges. And be sure to watch until the end, because this story takes a turn that nobody standing in that plaza saw coming. The morning sun reflected off the glass facade behind Officer Walker as dozens of city employees passed through security checkpoints. Visitors carried coffee cups and folders toward important meetings. Yet suddenly, none of that mattered. All eyes were on Monica. Walker studied her carefully. "Can I ask why you're entering this building today?" he said. "I have a scheduled meeting," Monica replied calmly. "With whom?" Monica glanced toward the entrance before looking back at him. "I believe that information is already on today's visitor list." A few nearby employees exchanged curious looks. Walker folded his arms. To him, something felt out of place. He couldn't explain it. He simply trusted his instincts. What he didn't realize was that Monica Hayes had spent years observing exactly how people behaved when they believed nobody important was watching. And as strangers quietly formed opinions about her without knowing a single fact, Monica recognized something everyone else had missed. The real test had already begun. Monica Hayes walked calmly toward the bench Officer Brian Walker had indicated and took a seat without protest. The plaza continued to buzz with activity around her. City employees crossed the courtyard, carrying laptops and folders. Delivery workers rolled carts toward side entrances. Visitors checked their phones while waiting for appointments. Life moved normally for everyone else. Yet Monica could feel the invisible spotlight that now followed her. People glanced in her direction before quickly looking away. Others whispered quietly to one another. None of them knew her. None of them knew why she was there. Yet many had already formed conclusions. Monica rested her leather portfolio beside her and folded her hands in her lap. Her expression remained composed. This was not the first time she had experienced something like this. For years she had worked in environments where people made assumptions long before asking questions. The difference was that most people never realized they were doing it. Across the plaza, Walker remained near the entrance, occasionally looking toward her while speaking with another officer. He appeared confident. Certain. Like a man convinced he was protecting the public from a problem only he could see. Monica understood that mindset better than he could imagine. Understanding people had become part of her profession. Nearly 8 years earlier, she had accepted a position with an independent civic accountability organization funded by multiple state agencies. The work rarely attracted public attention. That was intentional. Her team reviewed systems, procedures, and professional conduct across public institutions. Most citizens never heard about their investigations. Most employees never realized they were being evaluated until long after the process had begun. Monica had built a reputation for patience. She listened more than she spoke. Observed more than she revealed. While others searched for dramatic moments, she focused on patterns. Small decisions. Everyday interactions. The moments people believed did not matter. Those moments often revealed the most. A cool breeze moved through the plaza, rustling the flags hanging from poles near the entrance. Monica looked up at the administrative building. Sunlight reflected from the glass, creating bright flashes against the blue sky. Somewhere inside that building, an important meeting was scheduled to begin within the hour. Several senior officials had already arrived. Others were still making their way through security. Yet Monica showed no urgency. She simply watched. A woman carrying a stack of folders approached the entrance and entered without interruption. Moments later, a man in a business suit walked inside after a brief greeting with security personnel. Then another. And another. Monica noticed the differences. Not just in treatment. In assumptions. Nearby, two visitors sitting at another bench began discussing her situation quietly. One assumed she must have forgotten identification. Another suggested there was probably more to the story. Monica did not react. She had learned long ago that people often revealed themselves when they thought nobody important was listening. Across the plaza, Walker checked his watch and spoke into a radio. Then he looked toward Monica again. Their eyes met briefly. He seemed puzzled by her calmness. Most people would have become frustrated by now. Some would have argued. Others would have left. Monica did neither. She remained exactly where she was, watching the building, watching the crowd, and quietly taking note of everything. Because while everyone else believed she was waiting for permission to enter, Monica was actually learning far more from the delay than she ever could have learned from the meeting itself. Officer Brian Walker had spent more than 20 years wearing a badge. During that time, he had developed a reputation that few people questioned. City leaders praised his professionalism. Business owners greeted him by name. Local newspapers often quoted him whenever public safety became a topic of discussion. To many residents, Walker represented experience, confidence, and stability. Standing near the entrance of the city administrative center, he carried himself with the certainty of a man who believed he understood people almost immediately. That confidence had been reinforced for years. Colleagues trusted his judgment. Supervisors rarely challenged his decisions. Newer officers often sought his advice. The result was a mindset Walker barely noticed anymore. He had begun relying on instinct as much as evidence. Sometimes more. Across the plaza, Monica Hayes remained seated on the bench. She appeared patient. Unbothered. Walker found that unusual. Most people who felt unfairly singled out eventually showed frustration. They raised their voices. They demanded explanations. Monica had done neither. The longer she remained calm, the more curious he became. Yet instead of questioning his assumptions, Walker interpreted her behavior as confirmation that he was handling the situation correctly. A younger officer approached him carrying a tablet. Still waiting on verification, the officer asked quietly. Walker nodded. Something does not add up. The younger officer glanced toward Monica. She seems pretty calm. Walker folded his arms. That does not mean anything. The officer nodded and walked away. Nearby, city employees continued flowing through the entrance. Security personnel greeted familiar faces. Government contractors displayed identification badges. Department managers entered carrying briefing folders. The entire process appeared smooth and efficient. Walker took pride in maintaining that order. What he did not realize was that order and fairness were not always the same thing. Monica observed everything from her seat. Every interaction. Every greeting. Every shortcut. Every assumption. The morning sunlight had climbed higher now, warming the concrete plaza. Reflections shimmered across the glass walls of the building. A fountain near the entrance produced a steady sound of moving water that softened the noise of the city beyond. For most people, it felt like an ordinary workday. For Monica, it was becoming something much more revealing. Inside the building, preparations were underway for an important meeting involving senior officials from multiple agencies. Reports had been prepared. Presentations finalized. Schedules coordinated weeks in advance. Yet outside, one of the most important observations of the entire process was unfolding in plain sight. Walker checked his watch again. Then his phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen and read a message. His expression changed briefly before returning to normal. Whatever information he received seemed to reinforce his confidence. He slipped the phone back into his pocket and looked across the plaza once more. Monica met his gaze calmly. Neither person looked away immediately. It was a quiet moment, almost insignificant on the surface. Yet beneath it existed two completely different understandings of the situation. Walker believed he was evaluating a visitor. Monica knew she was witnessing something far more important. And as another black government vehicle quietly pulled into the reserved parking area near the building, the first pieces of a much larger picture were beginning to arrive. The black government vehicle that had arrived moments earlier remained parked near the reserved entrance while several officials stepped out carrying briefcases and folders. Most people in the plaza barely noticed them. Their attention remained fixed on the normal rhythm of the morning. Monica Hayes noticed everything. She watched as one official checked his watch and glanced toward the main entrance. Another spoke quietly into a phone before disappearing inside. Small details. Ordinary details. Yet together they confirmed something important. The meeting was still moving forward exactly as planned. Across the plaza, Officer Brian Walker continued his routine. He spoke with employees. Checked credentials. Exchanged greetings with familiar faces. To anyone observing from a distance, he appeared professional and efficient. Monica understood why people respected him. Confidence often looked like competence. The challenge was determining whether confidence was supported by fairness. A few minutes later, a middle-aged man carrying a leather portfolio approached the entrance. Walker nodded and allowed him through after a brief conversation. Moments after that, another visitor entered with little more than a smile and a quick greeting. Monica watched the pattern carefully. Nobody asked detailed questions. Nobody directed those individuals to a bench. Nobody suggested they wait outside while additional verification was completed. The contrast was impossible to ignore. A pair of city employees passing nearby glanced toward Monica again. One of them lowered her voice. "I wonder what she did." The other shrugged. "If they stopped her, there must be a reason." Monica heard every word. Neither comment surprised her. Human beings often searched for explanations that protected existing assumptions. It felt easier than questioning whether the assumptions themselves might be wrong. The fountain continued flowing beside the plaza. Sunlight reflected across the water and danced against the surrounding stone. The city seemed peaceful. Yet beneath the calm surface, Monica could feel the test becoming more revealing with every passing minute. Walker eventually approached her again. His expression remained polite but firm. "We are still waiting on confirmation," he said. Monica nodded. "I understand." The answer seemed to catch him off guard. He had expected frustration. Perhaps even an argument. Instead, she remained completely composed. Walker studied her for a moment. "You seem remarkably patient." Monica offered a faint smile. "I have learned that people reveal a great deal when they are not being rushed." Walker frowned slightly, unsure how to interpret the response. Before he could say anything else, his radio crackled. A voice requested his presence near the security desk. He excused himself and walked back toward the entrance. Monica watched him go. Then she opened her portfolio and reviewed a few pages inside. Nothing dramatic. Just notes. Observations. Timelines. The type of information most people would overlook. A shadow briefly crossed the plaza as clouds drifted overhead. The bright sunlight softened. For a moment, the entire scene felt strangely still. Then the front doors of the administrative center opened once more. Several senior officials emerged and began scanning the plaza as though searching for someone. Monica closed her portfolio and looked up. Whatever happened next, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. The people now stepping outside were about to change the direction of the entire morning. The officials who had stepped outside did not immediately approach the entrance. Instead, they paused near the top of the wide stone staircase and surveyed the plaza. Their presence attracted attention almost instantly. Employees slowed their pace. Visitors turned their heads. Even some of the security staff exchanged curious glances. These were not ordinary administrators. Several held senior positions within city government. One was known throughout the state for overseeing compliance reviews. Another regularly advised municipal leadership on accountability standards. Yet none of them appeared interested in the building itself. They seemed to be looking for someone. Monica Hayes remained seated on the bench, watching quietly. The cool breeze continued moving through the plaza. Tree branches swayed gently above the walkway. Sunlight slipped between passing clouds and illuminated the glass walls of the administrative center. The scene looked peaceful. Yet beneath the surface, tension was beginning to build. Officer Brian Walker noticed the officials as well. He adjusted his posture and moved toward the entrance area, assuming they were arriving for the same meeting everyone had been discussing for weeks. As they descended a few steps, one of the officials spoke briefly with another while scanning the crowd. Their attention passed over employees, visitors, and security personnel. Then it stopped. For a moment, their eyes settled in Monica's direction. Walker did not notice. He was busy speaking with another officer and checking messages on his phone. Nearby, several people continued whispering about Monica. Some wondered why she was still waiting. Others assumed there must be a problem with her credentials. The longer she sat there, the more confident they became in their assumptions. Monica listened without responding. Her calmness never changed. Years of professional experience had taught her that first impressions often revealed more about the observer than the person being observed. A few minutes later, Walker approached the bench once again. "We are still working through the verification process," he said. "I appreciate your cooperation." Monica nodded politely. "Of course." Walker seemed almost frustrated by how little reaction he was getting. The situation was no longer unfolding the way he expected. Most people eventually demanded answers. Monica simply continued observing. That made her difficult to read. Difficult to categorize. Difficult to dismiss completely. Across the plaza, the senior officials began walking toward the center courtyard. Conversations around them grew quieter. One employee stepped aside to clear their path. Another offered a greeting. The group acknowledged them politely but continued forward with purpose. Walker finally noticed their movement and turned toward them. His expression brightened slightly. He recognized several faces. Whatever concerns he had about the morning seemed to fade. He believed help had arrived. What he did not know was that the officials were not there to assist him. They were there because of the meeting Monica had mentioned from the very beginning. The fountain continued its steady rhythm. Water sparkled beneath the afternoon light. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell marked the passing hour. The officials drew closer. Walker straightened his uniform. Monica slowly rose from the bench and picked up her leather portfolio. Several people noticed. The plaza seemed to hold its breath. And as the group approached within a few yards of where she stood, the first words they spoke were about to change everything. The plaza grew unusually quiet as the group of officials stopped a short distance away. For a brief moment, nobody spoke. Employees lingering near the entrance lowered their voices. Visitors paused in mid-conversation. Even the steady sounds of the city seemed farther away now. Monica Hayes stood beside the bench with her leather portfolio resting at her side. The afternoon sun had softened behind a layer of thin clouds, casting a gentle silver light across the glass walls of the administrative center. A breeze moved through the courtyard, stirring the leaves of the trees lining the walkway. Officer Brian Walker remained near the security checkpoint, watching the approaching officials with growing curiosity. He expected introductions. Instructions. Perhaps a discussion about the meeting inside. Instead, the officials appeared focused on something else entirely. Monica looked toward the building entrance. The reflection of the sky shimmered across the windows. She could see people moving inside the lobby, preparing conference rooms and carrying folders from office to office. The meeting she had come for was only minutes away now. Yet she felt no urgency. The most important part of the day was already unfolding outside. She remembered a lesson from years earlier during one of her first oversight assignments. A senior mentor had told her that reports and statistics rarely revealed the full truth. The real story was often found in ordinary moments. How people treated strangers. How they responded to uncertainty. How they behaved when they believed nobody important was paying attention. Monica had carried that lesson with her ever since. Across the courtyard, Walker exchanged a few words with another officer. The younger man seemed confused by the situation. Walker nodded confidently, though even he was beginning to sense that something unexpected was happening. The officials had not greeted him. They had not requested assistance. They had barely acknowledged the security station at all. Their attention remained fixed elsewhere. Monica watched a small bird land near the edge of the fountain. Sunlight danced across the water behind it. The scene felt strangely peaceful compared to the tension that had filled the morning. She took a slow breath and allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. For months, her team had prepared for this evaluation. Meetings had been scheduled. Records reviewed. Policies examined. Yet no report could capture what she had witnessed since arriving. No spreadsheet could fully explain the assumptions that had shaped every interaction. Those details mattered. They always mattered. A few of the officials exchanged brief smiles as they continued walking forward. Their pace remained unhurried. Deliberate. Professional. Around them, the crowd seemed to sense that something significant was about to happen. Conversations faded completely. The plaza settled into an almost complete stillness. Monica adjusted her grip on the portfolio and glanced once more toward the sky. The clouds had begun to break apart, allowing shafts of warm sunlight to spill across the courtyard. Golden reflections stretched across the stone pavement. It was a beautiful afternoon. Calm. Quiet. Balanced on the edge of change. Then the lead official stepped forward, looked directly at Monica, and smiled as though greeting someone he had known for years. In that instant, every person watching understood that the next few moments would reveal something none of them had expected. The lead official stopped directly in front of Monica Hayes and extended his hand without hesitation. A warm smile crossed his face. "Good morning, Ms. Hayes," he said. "We have been expecting you." The words seemed to echo across the courtyard. For a second, nobody moved. The employees standing nearby looked at one another. The visitors who had spent the morning whispering suddenly fell silent. Even the sound of the fountain seemed distant. Monica returned the handshake calmly. "Good morning," she replied. The official glanced toward the others in his group. "We are ready whenever you are." Behind him, several senior administrators nodded respectfully. One carried a thick binder. Another held a tablet displaying meeting schedules and briefing materials. Their body language made one thing unmistakably clear. Monica was not an ordinary visitor. She was someone they had been waiting for. Officer Brian Walker remained frozen near the security station. Confusion spread across his face. He had spent the entire morning assuming he understood the situation. Now that certainty was beginning to disappear. The younger officer beside him looked equally puzzled. "Do you know her?" he asked quietly. Walker did not answer. His attention remained fixed on Monica and the officials surrounding her. The lead administrator turned toward the crowd and spoke in a professional tone. "Thank you for your patience, Ms. Hayes. The mayor, department directors, and review committee members are already assembled upstairs." Several people nearby exchanged surprised glances. The review committee. The words carried weight. Many city employees recognized them immediately. For months, rumors had circulated about a major independent evaluation of public service standards throughout the city. Nobody seemed to know who was leading it. Until now. Monica picked up her portfolio. The official beside her reached for the door, clearly prepared to escort her inside. Before they moved, another administrator smiled and said, "Your recommendations from the preliminary assessment have already generated significant discussion. Everyone is eager to hear your findings." The plaza became completely silent. A woman standing near the entrance covered her mouth in surprise. One employee lowered the coffee cup he had been holding. Another stared openly at Monica, struggling to reconcile the quiet woman from the bench with the person now being addressed by senior leadership. Walker finally stepped forward. "Wait," he said. The word escaped almost involuntarily. The officials turned toward him. Monica did as well. For the first time all morning, Walker seemed uncertain. Not defensive. Not angry. Simply uncertain. "You are leading the evaluation?" he asked. Monica held his gaze calmly. "I am leading the independent oversight review team assigned to assess professional conduct standards across multiple city departments." No one spoke after that. The answer landed with quiet force. Suddenly every conversation from earlier that morning took on a different meaning. Every assumption. Every judgment. Every decision. The officials began guiding Monica toward the entrance. As they walked, employees stepped aside respectfully. The same people who had barely noticed her before now watched in stunned silence. Yet Monica showed no sign of satisfaction. No triumph. No desire to embarrass anyone. She simply continued toward the building. Because the revelation was not the most important part of the day. What mattered was what the revelation revealed about everyone else. And as the doors opened and Monica prepared to enter the meeting she had come to lead, Officer Brian Walker realized that the person he had spent the entire morning evaluating had quietly been evaluating him all along. The large glass doors closed softly behind Monica Hayes as she entered the administrative center alongside the group of senior officials. Outside, the plaza remained frozen in a mixture of surprise and disbelief. Inside, the atmosphere was equally tense. Staff members standing near the reception area immediately straightened when they saw her arrive. Several department directors waiting in the lobby stepped forward to greet her. One after another, they welcomed her with a level of respect that left no doubt about her role. Monica responded politely to each greeting, never drawing attention to herself, never acknowledging the dramatic contrast between the way she was being treated now and the way she had been treated only an hour earlier. As the group moved toward the elevator, the lead administrator handed her a folder containing the final agenda for the day. "The mayor requested additional time for your presentation," he said. After reviewing the preliminary findings, several department heads had questions. Monica nodded. "I am looking forward to the discussion." Her calm response reflected the same composure she had maintained throughout the entire morning. Nothing about her demeanor suggested triumph. Nothing suggested resentment. She remained focused on the purpose of her visit. Meanwhile, outside the building, Officer Brian Walker stood near the entrance staring through the glass doors. The younger officer beside him remained silent for several seconds before speaking. "You did not know." Walker slowly shook his head. The realization was difficult to process. For years he had trusted his instincts without question. He believed experience alone could guide his judgment. Yet everything he had assumed about Monica had been wrong. More importantly, the assumptions themselves had become part of the story. Around them, conversations spread quietly among employees and visitors. Some looked embarrassed by comments they had made earlier. Others seemed thoughtful. A few appeared uncomfortable. The revelation had forced everyone to confront the same question. Why had they been so quick to believe she did not belong? Upstairs, Monica entered a large conference room overlooking the city skyline. Floor-to-ceiling windows filled the room with natural light. Around the polished table sat officials from multiple departments. The mayor stood as she entered. Several others followed. After brief introductions, the meeting began. Monica listened carefully before presenting her observations. She spoke about professionalism, consistency, public trust. She discussed the importance of evaluating behavior not only during major incidents but also during ordinary interactions. The room remained silent as she explained how everyday decisions often revealed the true culture of an organization. No names were mentioned. No personal attacks were made. Her goal was improvement, not humiliation. As the discussion continued, many of the leaders appeared deeply reflective. They understood the significance of her message. Systems were shaped by people. And people were shaped by habits they often failed to examine. By the time the meeting concluded, the afternoon sun had begun drifting toward the horizon. Outside, long shadows stretched across the plaza. Inside, Monica gathered her notes and prepared to leave. The officials thanked her for her work and for the honesty of her assessment. Yet the most important impact of the day could not be found inside any report. It existed in the minds of the people who had witnessed what happened that morning. And for one officer standing outside near the entrance, that lesson was only beginning to take root. When Monica Hayes finally stepped out of the administrative center, the sun was hanging low above the city skyline. Golden light stretched across the plaza, turning the glass walls of the building into mirrors of orange and silver. The crowds from earlier had mostly disappeared. Employees were heading home. Visitors were leaving with briefcases and notebooks tucked beneath their arms. The energy of the morning had given way to a calm evening quiet. Monica paused at the top of the stone staircase and looked across the courtyard. The fountain still flowed steadily. The trees still swayed in the breeze. Yet something felt different. Not because she had gained recognition. Not because anyone had discovered her title. But because an important truth had finally revealed itself. Near the security station, Officer Brian Walker remained standing where he had been for much of the afternoon. The confidence that usually defined him had been replaced by reflection. He was not angry. He was not defensive. He simply looked thoughtful. As Monica began walking toward the plaza, Walker stepped forward. For a brief moment, neither spoke. The sounds of the city drifted through the evening air. Traffic moved beyond the government district. A distant train horn echoed somewhere across town. Finally, Walker cleared his throat. "Ms. Hayes," he said. Monica stopped and turned toward him. Walker looked down briefly before meeting her eyes. "I owe you an apology." The words came quietly. There was no audience left to impress. No crowd watching. Just two people standing beneath the fading light. "I made assumptions before I knew anything about you." Monica listened without interruption. Walker continued. "The more I thought about it today, the more I realized that was the real problem." Monica nodded gently. "Assumptions are easy," she said. "Understanding takes effort." Walker absorbed the words for several seconds. Then he offered a small, genuine smile. "I think I have some work to do." Monica smiled back. "Most of us do." There was no lecture. No humiliation. No victory speech. Just an honest exchange between two people who had learned something important. As they parted ways, Walker remained near the entrance while Monica continued across the plaza. The evening breeze moved through the trees above her. Long shadows stretched across the pavement. The city lights were beginning to appear one by one in the surrounding buildings. Behind her, the administrative center stood quietly against the sunset. Ahead of her, the sidewalk disappeared into the rhythm of the city. Months later, several recommendations from the Oversight Review would be implemented across multiple departments. Training programs were updated. Evaluation procedures improved. Conversations that once seemed uncomfortable became necessary. Change did not happen overnight. Real change rarely does. But it began with a moment that forced people to examine what they believed and why they believed it. Monica never spoke publicly about what happened that morning. She did not need to. The lesson was already clear. A person's worth cannot be measured by appearance, assumptions, or first impressions. Character reveals itself over time, and true leadership often belongs to those who never feel the need to announce it. As the last light of day faded beyond the skyline, Monica disappeared into the crowd of ordinary people making their way home. Yet the question left behind remained extraordinary. How many opportunities, friendships, or acts of kindness have been missed because someone made a judgment before learning the truth? And if you had been standing in that plaza that morning, what would your first assumption have been?